To start with, what we see at the beginning are not your typical love arrow shooting cherubs. And if you add the title, you can be sure you're in for something steamy. But sadly, there's also the ravaging black sickness everywhere, as a church cathedral painter narrates this tale. The feudal lord by the name of Cherubino has ordered his boys to chase Lorenzo down for beating him at the gambling table. By the way, Lorenzo is a local young man who has a crush on our protagonist. He barely manages to elude them, and trust me, this is more to do with money than with the lady, at least for now. The next morning, Lorenzo makes a stop at Pampinia's house. She's the main female lead and also his crush amongst many other admirers. His friends arrive with a horse so he can skip town as Cherubino's men continue to search for him. Meanwhile, Pampinea is grieving the death of her parents to the plague. Cherubino walks in saying that her father owed him a debt, and to pay it back, Pampinea needs to marry him. How convenient, don't you think? Also, the narrator has soon abandoned his church roof painting job and become a full-fledged priest because the Holy Ghost whispered it to him. Lorenzo, on his part, is being chased on horseback and ends up at the sanctuary of nuns. Imagine that for a moment, will you? That same thought happens to be the wish of almost every red-blooded man, so it might interest us to know how he got in. The prior scene played out like this. He fell from a tree while hiding from Cherubino's men, and the nuns thought he fell from heaven. To be fair, he even looked the part because he had such a handsome, angelic face. Lorenzo even went further by pretending to be deaf and dumb, which endeared him even more to the nuns. At least, if a nun can't get a regular man, then an angel will, especially if he was God sent. In the following scene, Pampinea and her girls, together with Lorenzo's friends, call for a meeting at the church to decide on leaving town because of the plague. Cherubino crashes the meeting and commands that they disperse. He even recognizes and threatens Lorenzo's friends. But then the newest and self-appointed priest intervenes. Afterward, they're soon on their way out of the hellhole caused by the plague. But Pampinea does one better and checks herself into the same convent where Lorenzo is. Yep, the same Lorenzo is claiming to be deaf and dumb and having a field day with all the nuns. While being prepared for life as a nun, Pampinea can help but cite Lorenzo. In fact, you can't miss him seeing he's the only man there. He works as a convent gardener and has become very popular indeed. Pampinea notices how the other nuns enjoy his company at some point, so she becomes jealous. In fact, any nun who has not yet been touched wants a piece of him. Pampinea herself is distracted from her original mission of waiting for her betrothed, who is a nobleman and the count of a province in Russia. As you'll find, he's a very confident young man who is proud of his heritage and mounts it off at every opportunity to anyone who cares to listen. And so enters the count to pick Pampinea up so they can get married according to her father's last wishes. Remember, Cherubino has taken advantage of her father's death and alleged indebtedness to corner Pampinea for himself. Instead of Pampinea, who has since fled, the count is met with Cherubino and his men. Cherubino now claims to be Pampinea's rightful fiancé, but the count is strong-willed and doesn't believe this. One fun fact is his Russian accent is quite strong. He writes out, and fortunately, a servant hands over a personal message from Pampinea. The others are still on the road talking about their virginity and all. Two cowgirls appear from nowhere and tempt Lorenzo's friends to come in onto them. The problem is Dino, who is one of Lorenzo's diehard pals, has a girlfriend who insists on remaining chaste till marriage. Her name is Filomena, and she's tall and attractive. The two young men go to meet the cowgirls, but Filomena eventually catches them red-handed. She's angry that Dino could betray their vow of abstinence. In a different scene, Pampinea refuses to urge to act like the other nuns around Lorenzo, and she makes him know it. Even the head nun cannot resist Lorenzo. Meanwhile, the count is on the way to meet up with Pampinea, but Cherubino and his boys ambush his group. He managed to kill all the count's men, and he narrowly escapes only to bump into Cherubino sometime later. Luckily, the count just so happens to be carrying a gun, which is a rarity in those days. Cherubino sees it and wants one too. Greedy behavior, man. Finally, Pampinea succumbs to temptation. Okay, only partly. She goes over to Lorenzo's room carrying his food, then she blindfolds him and kisses him. Then she promptly goes away. So in addition to pretending to be deaf and dumb, he might as well add being blind to his show. However, Pampinea's actions leave him wanting more, even as he never had the chance to see her true identity. We now see that the rest of the group is still on the road. Dino is angry at Filomena, his girlfriend, for complicating his wet dream. They both go off the road and into the woods to make up, but then they're captured by some big men and taken to a camp. Filomena finds Melissa already there, and it seems they've all been taken. Melissa is friends with Pampinea, as is Filomena too. And mind you, the priest has since left on his own beforehand. The leader of these men suggests that the girls will be taken to Africa to work as prostitutes, Melissa will not accept her captivity lying down literally, and so she devises a plan to seduce the leader and to escape. But Melissa's seduction falls short, and so she changes plans. She, with the help of Philomena, goes over to where the rest of the men are. They're both able to convince all the men to take their pants down literally for a chance to be the one to have Philomena for the night. Melissa is then able to steal a bunch of keys and they all escape. The news gets to Pampinea that the Count is in search of her, so she must leave the convent and wants to be married. But first, she must leave a parting shot, which is, if she can't have him, then no one else would. In other words, she exposes Lorenzo's antics to the nuns by revealing that he can indeed talk. So the nuns catch him in his lie, and he's promptly evicted from the convent. Here's what happens next, also known as the twist in the tale. The Count roams the woods alone and comes to a river. While trying to drink, he sees Melissa swimming, and as nature would have it, he thinks he has found his Pampinea, and worse still, he doesn't deny it. So they end up making out. Meanwhile, Pampinea is on her way to meet up with him at the wedding venue. Too late, girl. However, she picks Lorenzo on her way there. When they arrive, there's nobody there. So Pampinea and Lorenzo get to talking. He tells her about the mysterious nun from earlier who kissed him blindfolded. Goodness, he doesn't even know she's right there in front of him. What's with a set of women in blind spots, huh? As they talk, Pampinea sees how seriously in love Lorenzo has become with this mysterious woman, namely herself. And they're walking while talking now. And Pampinea proposes that she can make him forget about this woman with her kiss. The same kiss that has his head over heels in love. Pampinea's hope is that he recognizes the kiss as being hers. As they're about to lock lips, Zerbino arrives on horseback with his men and interrupts them. He tries to kill Lorenzo, but Pampinea intercedes and says she won't marry him with Lorenzo's blood in his hands, so Lorenzo is locked up instead. Next up, Zerbino arranges for a priest right away, and it just so happens that the same self-anointed priest stumbles in from nowhere. Also, Zerbino releases Lorenzo as a sign of good faith. However, he has secretly ordered his men to kill him. Lorenzo outwits the men just as the Count rides past on his horse. They both have a wedding to gate crash. According to Pampinea's wishes, the priest stalls for as long as he can. Soon, both the Count and then Lorenzo arrive. They challenge Zerbino and a sword fight ensues. They easily have Zerbino cornered and toss a coin to decide who fights him first. Lorenzo wins, and so Zerbino has to fight him at the edge of the well. Another fun fact, Zerbino is scared of heights, but his pride won't allow him to give up. So they fight for Pampinea's honor. It's easy to see that Zerbino will lose this one, so he ends up being distracted and falling all the way into the well to his death. Now the Count makes its move on Pampinea, but she uncovers her veil, and the Count thinks she's not Pampinea. At least not the enchantress he met by the river. Suddenly, Melissa appears and the Count declares his love for her. She's a lucky girl because she'll be taken as royalty from henceforth, and other friends of the group arrive too. Meanwhile, Lorenzo has left them to be on his way. Pampinea chases after him and tries to convince him to stay. He insists he has fallen in love with the memory of the mysterious nun's kiss, so Pampinea jugs his memory a little by doing the exact thing that got him hooked in the first place. Now his eyes are open.